I hope this works. I'm gonna have to check. Oh, we're going live. We're live now. So I'm gonna have to wait till this loads up. Give it a little time. Wait till everybody kind of funnels in. Everybody can check it out. Oh, my volume is all the way up. What is going on, guys? Usually I'm not this dysfunctional, but I want to let you guys know what's going on. So, um, in the title change, hopefully I'll change it. If not, you can check back later. But basically, I'm going through 5 or 6 records tonight of albums that I hadn't had the chance to review, but I wanted to get around to reviewing. But just due to time constraints and just being the end of the year, I wanted to kind of do a bunch of them, quick shot, and let you guys know what was going on. So, the records that I am doing tonight are ones that I really enjoyed, that I feel like have gone under the radar. There have been some other YouTubers that have reviewed it. Some haven't, which is really great because there's a lot of bands on here that I feel like are deserving of that attention just as much. So I'm going to go through all of the records. I'm not really going to go through each track just because I feel like it would be very time consuming. And, it's like a couple hours, I don't feel like I should be taking all of that time. But this is part one of part two. Part two will be out and be done live next Saturday. So if you missed out on this one, you have next week. And if you'd like to see more of these, I will start to do them maybe at the beginning of the end of every month. The month that follows. So, for example, like this one will probably be just the last one for December, obviously. But in January, if there's any records that happen in January that you would like me to just kind of like graze over and do reviews on, this is kind of the new section that I feel like a lot of people may or may not enjoy. But I just feel like it's maybe a little bit easier on me, and it gives you more content for you guys to check out. So, if you're interested, leave a comment. I'd love to know what you think about it. I also feel like it's a really cool way to engage with my fans as well. So if this is something that intrigues you or interests you at all, let me know down below. But the first record is Coldrain's The Side Effects. I've been a really big fan of this band actually for a very long time, and I had did reviews of both Vena, I'm pretty sure that's how you pronunciate it, and their last record, which I'm blanking on the name, but it's basically the rose with a bunch of nails on it. And they're a sick band from Japan. I actually saw them and found out about them on Warped Tour. I believe it was back in it was whatever year they came to America. I think it was 2016 maybe, or 2017. I'm not entirely sure. But they are fantastic. Like, they're a band that, again, much like, ironically enough, Crystal Lake features on one of the tracks off the record. But I feel like they're a band that could easily be up there. Like, One OK Rock is another popular Japanese band. Baby Metal, which is like the pinnacle, I would say, of like the Japanese like bands that people would know off the cuff of their hands for sure. But this band has had features from Jacoby Shaddix, of Papa Roach, so I feel like they are not distant from the limelight, as you might say. And I just feel like they're a band that a lot of people, would enjoy if they actually knew about them and were listening to them. They kind of remind me a lot of like what Of Mice and Men would sound like, if they kind of like kept the whole like post-hardcore like metalcore sort of vibe. But their vocalist is awesome. He's got such a great range. He does the screaming and the singing, which is very cool as well. But they just have this beautiful mix of like melody, but also some like really great like post-hardcore like metalcore elements into their music. And I really feel like this is probably their best work to date for sure. It's got some of their strongest material. Mayday, the track it starts off with on the record, features Rio of Crystal Lake, which is another fantastic Japanese band, as I had mentioned before. But that track is just like straight off like so good, and it just definitely has that sort of like hard rock, post-hardcore, metalcore sort of feel to it. And it's kind of interesting considering that I feel like they've kind of like tethered with being like a little bit more of a heavier band or doing the lighter stuff. And there's been some like aspects of their music that I feel like have kind of like not wishy-washy in a sense, but definitely was maybe not like agreed with upon like other releases and stuff like that. But overall I feel like their discography as a band is really solid. Some favorites of mine off this record, like I mentioned before, Mayday is definitely one of my favorites. See You's another fantastic one that actually has a very sort of like poppy like chorus sort of like definitely like really pop inspired music, but also very like more rock based, like hard rock based, which is what they're known for. The title track is actually very good too. It's got this really cool like bounce and like rhythm, and they incorporate like some really cool like electronic elements in there as well. I feel like, kind of paying homage to bands like Bring Me the Horizon. And I would say probably the last one that is my favorite for sure, Insomnia, I think is probably one of the better tracks, if not my favorite track off the record. And so it's just, again, a solid listen from front to back, one that I am kind of upset I didn't do a review on, just because I feel like they are a band that has been sliding under the radar for many, many years. And that's the same way I felt about a lot of Japanese bands. They unfortunately, die by the wayside. And, there are a lot of Japanese bands that are very popular that I feel like, do their genre justice. And, bands like Crossfaith is really awesome. As I have mentioned before, Baby Metal is a pretty massive Japanese band. And there's One OK Rock is great too. They kind of have like that more alternative, like pop punky sort of vibe, and they cover all of the bases in terms of those musical genres. But I think there has been kind of a band that lacks more of that more post-hardcore element to it. I know when I was growing up and listening to like a lot of different bands, I found out about this awesome Japanese band called Fact. I know that is for those of you who know about that band, know that is an old band. So and there's I think a small amount of like of their American audience that cared about Fact. And if you did, salutes to you, because they are awesome. And if you haven't checked out Fact, it's FACT. Check them out. The one with I think they have like a sumo mask. I forget the name of that record, but that one is awesome, and that one's probably my favorite Fact record. But getting back to Coldrain, they are a band that I feel like in 2020 will be very big. I know they have a large following and staple in Japan, obviously where they're from, but I would love for them to come back to the US. I feel like people weren't, I wouldn't even say as receptive, but I feel like people didn't really know about them, and it was cool to see somebody else comment on one of my videos. I forget your name, so I'm sorry about that, but he had commented if I was going to do a review of Coldrain's newest record, this one, The Side Effects, and unfortunately I didn't get around to doing it, but I wanted to just shout out not only him, but people who are a fan of Coldrain, because again, they are a band that I've done reviews of their music, and they are one to be keeping an eye out for in 2020, without a doubt. Like I mentioned, if you're a fan of like kind of like Breaking Benjamin, like of Mice and Men, like old school of Mice and Men, like first two record of Mice and Men, if you're a fan of like really great clean singing, like I think their vocalist is probably one of the best clean singers in the market now, for sure. I would put him up there with like Rory from Dayseeker in terms of like clean stuff. His screams are also very good too, but his cleans are so good. So Coldrain, if you happen to watch this, please come back to the US in 2020, even if it's later in the year. I'd love to be able to see you guys play, because I did catch your set at Warped, and I feel like I didn't get enough. So I'm excited for the new record. Go listen to the whole thing. Really phenomenal stuff. definitely album of the year contention for sure, just based off of, the innate ability of Cleed singing and screaming. I think on both fronts they do a really fantastic job of doing something that a lot of people know in this sort of style of music, but I think they do it in just such a unique way with like maybe a little bit of pop tinge in there, and it just works all the way around. And one you should go give a listen to. So we're going to move into the next record, which is one that I'm really mad I didn't do a review on, which is Gideon's Out of Control. As you know, I am a big Gideon fan. I think I've done I did a review of Cold. I did a review of Calloused, their other record. I'd love to do a review of their older records for sure. Milestone is such a fantastic Gideon record that I feel like goes under the radar for most people because they mostly associate a lot of their music with their new stuff. But speaking about their new record, Out of Control, it is awesome. I think this might be their best work to date as well, just as a band. And, not kind of delving into that whole, dirt pie of, religion versus non-religious things. I think as musical and musicality standpoint, I think they really stood out from the crowd even more so with this record. It feels very new metal influence. I know that they had said in past reviews, whether it be written or video interviews, they've said that a lot of their influences were drawn from a lot of new metal music, like Limp Bizkit, bands of those sorts, Korn, stuff like that. And you can definitely hear that influence in not only Tyler's writing, but I think also from just the phrasing and stuff. There's a little bit of rap parts in there, which definitely they bring out a lot in that sort of new mile-esque style of music. But this record is just really heavy from front to back. And as a avid Gideon fan, I've just been on the binge about listening to this record a lot. Just as the weeks round down to the top 10s, the albums of the year, the EPs of the year, this one I had to get around to listen to, and I had listened to it a lot. I was planning on doing a review of it, and it just never happened, never formulated. But this record is just, like I said, super heavy. If you love Gideon, I feel like you will definitely like this record a lot. The singles are really good. I'd say more specifically, if you were a fan of No Love, I feel like you would definitely dig this record a lot more. If you're a fan of Champion, there's some elements in there that feel along those lines in terms of that record. But if you're a fan of the split they did, basically the 2 single split record, that one, you'll definitely like this record a lot more. I think for older fans, it might be a little bit harder, especially, again, not going to delve into the lyrical content of it, but if you were more Christian based, you may not like this record because there does obviously include swearing in the record. And I think that should not justify your decision to not listen to it. I think if you're a fan of the music, I think people could still get behind it. But I think it resonated with me a lot just because of how I grew up and how things in my life have changed, and how my viewpoints on religion have changed for sure. So for me as a listener and just going through this record for kind of a knowledge of not only the Christian aspect of the music, but also kind of the secular aspect of it, I was definitely a fan of this one, just even more so than probably past Gideon records, because it just felt so honest. It felt so approachable, and while it was angry and a little bit more forward facing in terms of the lyrical backing behind it, I love just the abruptness of it. I think it brought out a lot of emotions that I wasn't really particularly expecting from me, but it felt very cathartic. And as a listener, not only a listener of a lot of records, but in a short amount of time frame, I think this one really struck home for me as a listener. Some tracks that I loved, I mean, there's just a laundry list of songs that I really loved on it. I actually loved a lot of the singles off the record, just because I felt like it was, they really just kind of knocked it out of the park with those. But if I had to be more specific, I loved Sleep. I thought that one, the single that they had released, I think it was the last one, was super sick. Bite Down is super messed up heavy, which I love. I think they really just, I don't know what tuning it was. I think somebody had mentioned it was going to be like drop G, but I'm not entirely sure. Tyler, if you're watching this, you can correct me, or any other Gideon fan for that matter. But I figured Tyler, I would ask him since he's in the band. But Bite Down was fantastic. I think all of the singles are really actually super good, and they really give you an idea of like what the record accurately represents, not only lyrically but also like instrumentally as well. And I think Dan just sounds awesome in this record. There's some heavy moments where he just sounds just super beefy. Too Close is very cool too. They had the screamer from Straight from the Path, which is very cool as well. I'm not 100% about his like vocal style, but I think fitting with what they do, as well as like, you know, their whole take on like new metal, I thought it was a perfect match in terms of like a guest feature, and just because both things really worked in tandem well, and it didn't seem like it was forced. It felt very natural to their musical styling. But realistically, I enjoyed all of the songs off the record. I don't think there's really a bad egg in the bunch. They're really, all of the tracks are phenomenal, and like I had mentioned before, I think this is some of their best material to date. Whether you agree upon it on the lyrical standpoint is a whole nother expression, but I think in terms of instrumentals, it's one record that I was just like really on board with, really enjoyed from front to back, and it was one that, again, a lot of new people who haven't checked them out should go check out this record, because it is probably one of the heaviest records of the year, maybe rivaling like Kubla Khan's record or Knock Loose's new record. I would put them in kind of the same category for sure. So we're going to move on to the next record, which is another classic band of mine, of my childhood, The Devil Wears Prada, the act. Again, you're going to notice a theme of why I didn't do a review of this record. I really don't know. I again had the initial thought to do it, but never got around to really actually doing it, and it's upsetting to me because I think this is like some of their most interesting work to date. Like, so I've seen a lot of reviews of it now since it's been out for some time, and it's just a mixed bag. I think a lot of people enjoy it, but I also think a lot of people don't like it either. Based off of the singles that I had listened to, Chemical was a little bit different. Lines of Your Hand was really good. Excuse me as I take a drink. Shouts to Wawa, but a regional staple of New Jersey. But getting back to the tracks, I think Lines of Your Hand was really good. I think their vocal feature, Lights, is very awesome. She's definitely done vocal features for like heavier bands, and her husband being Bo from Bless the Fall obviously makes sense for her to do some sort of like vocal feature in this genre, even though I feel like she doesn't do it often. I think this was really wellly executed. I think her voice paired with Mike's singing as well as Jeremy's like singing as well, I think it was interestingly arranged, and you know, again, for being kind of more of a, I wouldn't even say a slower song, but definitely like more on pace with like Transit Blues, their last record. It really works. As for the songs that I enjoyed, I would say Switchblade might be one of their best songs that they've written in a very long time. I've been kind of, I wouldn't say on again, off again fan. I mean, obviously I love Roots Above Branches Below. That is by far my favorite, followed by Plagues. But some of the newer records, I feel like I really didn't get into as much. It was just kind of like an overviewing of just records. Like Transit Blues, for example, I thought was very good. It just wasn't one that grasped me at first. And I think now, having the time to kind of like marinate over it, I still think it is a great record. I wouldn't put it in my personal top favorites, but I overall enjoyed the record. obviously I can go back and listen to a lot of the older ones. I think the Zombie EP is still by far their best work. But I will say I've had a change of heart about their record Dead Throne. And there's some, I feel like there's a little bit of Dead Throne influence in this record, but I would say for me as standout tracks, I would say Switchblade is definitely one that stuck out to me the most. I would say The Thread is another really good one that stuck out to me as well as just a listener of the band. They Switchblade and The Thread felt, especially Switchblade, felt like that old school. I was gonna say Bring Me the Horizon, but that's not the band. It felt very old school, like Devil Wears Prada, and I found kind of an akin to that, just because it felt very normal to what I enjoy, what I liked from the band. And it was good. I thought Chemical was very good as well. I wouldn't particularly put it in my favorites, but I think as a song itself was very well executed, well arranged. And I'd say I think Even Though is very good. I'm kind of like spacing out on some of the songs just because I feel like it's been a little bit since I've listened to all of them, but I just remember the memorability of Switchblade. That one really got me as an artist, and just listening to the band for such a long time. I felt like this one was just well put together. And like I had mentioned, I feel like there's just kind of a mixed bag overall. I think some older fans may not particularly be a fan of like how Mike's screaming now and just his vocal styling, but I think over time just that stuff becomes hard to do as an artist. And I think that they have really kind of like bridged the gap between kind of like what Garrett does in Silent Planet, where he does kind of more of like a spoken word part. Screaming is very harsh on people's bodies, especially if you don't know how to do it well and you're just spending tumultuous hours touring and doing all that stuff. Your voice, your lungs, all that sort of stuff, like the way you live in terms of your health can definitely be affected by that. And I'm not trying to justify Mike's screaming ability. I just understand that the band isn't always going to sound the same. Like they're not going to be in their 40s or early 50s and doing the same shit. Like it's just not right. I don't think it's personally right. I don't think it's personally going to happen like that. But some people believe that to be true, and they imagine that their band is going to sound forever, for all of eternity, and I don't think that's pretty accurate. Like if you want to hear Mike in his prime, go listen to the old stuff. I think that as a vocalist, he's learned to evolve, and like older tracks off of their like more current work, I think show a level of diversity. Now, do I think it is 100% perfect? Certainly not. But I like that he's giving people the option to, have more of a different viewpoint on it. And I think, like I said, tracks like Switchblade, every once in a while they have those gems that are a little bit heavier, they have a little bit more of a punch to them, and they deliver, especially on like for older fans like myself. I might be more of an open book than somebody else who's like a diehard fan, but I thought overall this record was really good too. Still debating on whether or not it will be in my albums of the year. I know it's been on a good amount of my friends that I know, that I talked to, on their albums of the year this year, but there's so many great records that came out this year in 2019. So I wanted to kind of go through all of them in some sort of capacity, some way, so you guys can go check them out and let me know what you guys think about the record. So we're going to move into the next one, which is actually one that I did an interview with. Thousand Below's Gone in Your Wake. This record was actually very good as well. I think a lot of these that I missed out on, I kind of like look back now and think like, man, I should have definitely done these when they came out, because especially this record in particular, I had been listening to this a lot after I had did the interview with their vocalist. I'm going to forget his name and sound like an idiot, but I think that just the way that they've been doing stuff lately, especially their last record, I was curious how they're going to follow up Tradition. I thought that was a very good record, but I also felt like they still had some growth to be had there. I'm actually looking up his name so I don't sound like a big dummy. James, shout outs to James. Sorry, James, forgot your name. But anyway, this album in general, I think was really good. I think some of the singles maybe gave people more of a misconception on how the record kind of sounds. There are some heavier tracks, but there's also a lot of melodicness, and I think James and I had talked about it a lot in our interview, that I feel like bands don't always have to go super heavy to sound good. Like, I think bands like Dayseeker, I know that we had mentioned them in our interview, and they've really transitioned the gap between like having that heavy sound in certain songs, but the whole thing's not heavy. Like, even if there is clean singing on a heavy track, it works, you know what I mean? And it's always worked. I feel like, there are some tracks that I feel like do it a little bit better than others, but I think if it's just the hook, the melody is really right, I don't even care if it's heavy, soft, acoustic, whatever. It's that just like infectiousness that gets stuck in your head that people enjoy. But some songs that I really enjoyed, I think Disassociation was very good, just because it's that heavy track that I feel like harkens back to their old style, but really kind of brings in their sort of new styling. Chemical was actually very good. That hook really gets stuck in your head. And they had some really awesome like vocal features as well. I know Marcus Bridge of North Lane did a feature on that as well, which I'll be adding North Lane to the list for next Saturday. But this record, I think that as a clean vocalist, I think he utilized him to the best ability. Like, I've always known he's been a really great clean vocalist. If you didn't know, Marcus was in this band called Sound of Season, and he was fantastic. Like, if you wanted to look up like an old school like post-hardcore, like really solid post-hardcore band, like go give them a listen. They flew under the radar for many years, and again wind up disbanding, and then Marcus got picked up from North Lane when he did that vocal contest. But this record, I think he showed off his ability as a clean vocalist, because I hadn't heard it in a very long time. Like, obviously, there are some cleans in North Lane stuff, but it's not really utilized as much as I feel like his screaming is. And I think he's so much better as a clean vocalist. It's just astonishing to me. But I think tracks like this show off his ability as a clean singer, and hopefully more people will check out not only North Lane but also his older band, which I had just mentioned. And they also had their the vocalist from Between the Buried, not the vocalist, but the guitar player from Between the Buried and Me, and he's in another band that I can't quite remember either. I think it's Heart of Gold, I'm pretty sure. And that's awesome because it definitely vibes with that like R&B flavoring. But some of the songs that I enjoyed, I think, like I had mentioned, Chemical, Disassociate are probably my favorite. Vanish is very good. I would say 171 XO, that one's a really great track as well. And I would say the other side of things, that was really, again, all of them really were solid. It was a record that I feel like from front to back really does a great justice of having some awesome melodies, some awesome like vocal lines, and just like lyrical content is very like emotional, very personable, and I think that's what resonated with me the most. Even though obviously I don't cover a lot of lyrical content on the channel, I think instrumentally it kind of funnels into that emotional value in terms of the lyrical content off the record. So this one, if you've been sleeping on this record for this year like I did, unfortunately, and just didn't do a review of it, you should go give this one a listen because it's really fantastic. But we're going to move into the next album that I plan on doing a review of, and it's this one, the Moths To Flames EP, Where the Light Refuses to Go. They had just recently signed to Unified, which I think is a great move on their part, especially as like a band. I feel like Rise is definitely going through more of a change in terms of their bands and who they have on their roster. and it's not. I don't think it's as heavy. I definitely still feel like they have some heavy bands. Like Kubla Khan is one of the ones that comes to mind when I think of Rise. But I think overall their bands, especially heavier bands, have kind of dissipated, and I think Unified and like Sharp Tone, I think those are record labels that are picking up a lot of the heavier stuff. I think Fearless does a great job of doing those two things as well. But I would say, in my opinion, personally, I feel like Unified and Sharp Tone are the ones that are picking up those really great, like, metalcore, post-hardcore, even kind of like more gentier bands up on the market. But this EP, I think most people were surprised because it was like kind of a surprise EP release. As I had mentioned, I didn't mention before, but I feel like I did. But anyway, they had released a single. I believe it was Smoke and Mirrors, and then All You'd Lost, and then obviously they released Into the Black. But the whole record is really awesome. I think if you missed out on Dark Divine and you went straight to this EP, you would be very surprised to see that they kind of kept a similar sound. But if you're like me and you've listened to all of their records, they kind of did an interesting transition. I feel like between it's not an eye for an eye. I want to say I don't know why I want to say I know it's not, that's not the record name, but for some reason I want to say it. And again, the wonders of the computer will save my life from screwing this up tremendously. But the record is very different in comparison if you look at it from that aspect of, yeah, no, it is an eye for an eye. Okay, cool. I was just making sure. I didn't want to look like an idiot, even though I do all the time, but this time I didn't really want to. But this record is like really good. I think in comparison to like their older records, it really feels at home with their older material. I just feel like the transition between this record and like Dark Divine, they went a lot more in that sort of rock direction, and I don't know if they got caught any flack for it because this record is much heavier, does have some great melodic elements, and I don't think they lost people on that aspect of it. But I think, like, if you think of like Nowhere Left to Sink, like that's more like hard rock. I guess I would consider it like post-hardcore. But for me, when I think of like Moths To Flames, I think of like heavy fucking shit. Like I'm thinking like The Worst in Me, GNF, like I'm thinking those heavy tracks, like that old stuff, I Solemnly Swear. Those are songs that I think of when I think of like Moths To Flames. Unfortunately I don't think of Nowhere Left to Sink, even though I think that record and that song is a fantastic thing on both ends of the spectrum. But this record is definitely heavier, as I had mentioned many times already, and I think I just feel like I'm a broken record, but it is heavier. All of the songs feel very cohesive. The EP feels like it just moves along in a really nice pace. It doesn't feel like each song kind of lags. It's got its moments of heaviness, but also at the same point, it's very melodic in certain parts, and I think they've kind of done more of a like 75 like heavier portion and definitely more of like a 25 softer, like more melodic parts. And again, they still kind of keep that sort of heavy branding that they're known for. But this EP, I feel like slipped by a lot of people's radars just because I feel like they weren't expecting as the fans, I guess, weren't expecting a record anytime soon. I think my initial thoughts when they had released Smoke and Mirrors, I just thought, I was like, oh, maybe it's just a single. They're going on tour at the time, and I was just like, they want to have material out for the tour. That makes sense. I hope there's like a record in the works, or I hope there's an EP in the works, but if there isn't, I'm not going to hold out for it. But this record / EP, I think, is very solid from front to back. One that I wasn't really expecting. But I think that overall, considering that, again, they moved to Unified and that they have kind of like a newer, heavier sound that they were going for now, it's definitely off on the right foot, and I feel like it feels more true to form to what they do. So we're going to move it into, I believe this is the last one. I'm not entirely sure. Yes, it is. It's the last record. And for those of you who have been watching my Instagram page and just watching things in general on the channel. You know how much I love this record, especially on my personal page. I want to give a mega shout out to my boy Jack. I think he was the one who originally put me onto this band. He's in a band called The Buried Heart. You should go give him a listen. But I figured, shouts to you, my boy Jack. I don't know if you watch my videos or not, but if you do, thank you. Thank you for giving me the recommendation. But if you don't know this record or this album, it's Sleep Token's record, Sundowning. I'm pretty sure I pronunciated that right. I'm not entirely sure. Again, if you're familiar with the channel, you know that I pronunciate things incorrectly all the time. So, you know, don't expect anything different. But the band itself was one that I feel like, for me, fell under the radar for a very long time. Like I had mentioned before, I had seen them on the obviously the tour for Issues, which I unfortunately missed out on, but as my voice cracks, but I thought they were really phenomenal. I think in terms of the tour aspect of it, I think they couldn't have picked a better band to open for them, because they have pretty much a very similar sound to what Issue does, but maybe more like ambient, more melodic, and I think they pull more from like UK and like British like R&B and like soul and stuff like that, because a lot of their material feels like that sort of styling of music, but they also have some like really like just beefy, gnarly, heavy tracks, which is very tight. But a lot of people, I think, don't know about them. I know, also shouts to my boy Daryl. I know the Daryl from the Ansible. If you haven't checked that band out, go do so. But I know he had been posting about them for a very long time too on my personal Facebook page. And they've been under the radar for such a long time. I know somebody else did a review of it, of their newest record, and I'm glad that they're getting that promotion, because this record is a banger and is definitely one of those records that I feel like is going to be on my albums of the year list no matter what, just because it's so eclectic. There's some heavier tracks, there's some really beautifully melodically arranged tracks, and there's some songs that kind of ride the gap between both. So I'm gonna take a sip real quick, guys. It's so hard. I don't typically make videos this long, and usually I have some screw ups when I'm doing the videos, but my god, like, it's so it's so hard to talk this much on a record, or about a bunch of records. But getting back to some of the songs, I think the first one that I listened to when I heard about the band was The Night Does Not Belong to God. And if you haven't listened to that one, I would recommend that one the most, just because I feel like I would also say The Offering, but that one is, I would say, a little bit more heavier. So if you're not really into that whole heavy vibe, I would say maybe you should pass on it. Also, as a blood sport plays in the background for like a hot second. But anyway, because I'm on their Facebook, or not Facebook page, on their actual website. But they had an interesting way of releasing this record. I think probably by far one of the more interesting ways that a band has released a record this year. And they've released, at the time, they had released a bunch of singles. So like each record was its own like individual single. It had its own like certain, like, they had like logos or emblems. I can't really show it on here, not because they're like lewd or anything, but it would just be too much. But anyway, they each had like a specific symbol that signified each song off the record, which I think is very cool. But also, as well as that, is like each song was individually singleized out, and then once they released the record, it was obviously just like a combination of all of their like symbols and stuff like that, which I thought was very interesting. But I think lyrical content and like apparently, again, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, because I know very little about this band, and I think there's very little to go off of on the internet. But I believe a lot of their like logos and like inferences in their like posts and stuff are about this thing called like worship, where I believe it's like a god that, like, it's some like storyline where it has to do with a god that is like their god, basically. I think all of the songs kind of pertain to a certain aspect of that god, in some way. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong or give me the accurate information on that. But I think it's really a unique thing. Again, I know I've been saying that a lot about a lot of these records that I've kind of smattered together on this video. But I think by far out of all of the bands that I've done reviews for and listened to over this year, this band has some of the most unique stuff I've heard. Not only this year, like in terms of like just the way that they do everything is just so interesting and unique to me. But some tracks that I enjoy as I look up the track list, because their names are very interesting and I unfortunately can't just go through all of them. I'm just gonna go on Genius because that's the easiest. But I think some of my favorite tracks off the record, in my personal opinion, The Offering was fantastic. If you're into like those heavier tracks, I would definitely give that one a listen. That one has that sort of genty, like real kind of like dark pop vibe, which is awesome. I would say Higher is another one of my favorite ones as well. Dark Signs was really great. I would say another fantastic one that I enjoyed was Give. Give was really great, and Sugar. I'd say probably Sugar was probably my favorite ones. I'm going to actually just go through the track list real quick because I don't want to just keep rambling on. Okay, here we go. Awesome. I would say for me, my top 5 off this record, I would say are The Night Doesn't Belong to God. I would say Dark Signs, Higher, Sugar, and then as an honorable mention, I would say Bloodsport, maybe Bloodsport 2. Really any of the 5 that I had just mentioned, plus the rest of the record, like Drag Me Under, Say You Will, Gods, Take Aim, Levitate. I think The Night Does Not Belong to God, as mentioned earlier. I think any of the tracks you could really just be well off with. They all have different vibes to them. I think, like I had mentioned before, The Night God Slept has more of this like ethereal, like super. I think it gets kind of heavier towards the end of the song, but I would say a good majority of it has this really like ethereal synth, like it's really ambient. It's really constructed considering the ambience of it. The Offering is definitely one of the more heavier tracks, and it is just like, especially that last like breakdown bit is super sick. Levitate is more like a piano kind of like softer, mellower track, and I mean I can go on. A lot of them feel like very different. Gods is another like heavier track, kind of on the same lane as The Offering. Bloodsport feels kind of like a smattering of the first track a little bit, but I would say they go a little bit heavier. And then Sugar is kind of like almost like an R&B, a sort of like soul kind of pop track, which I think is very interesting, like dark pop, not like real pop, like like Katy Perry or some bullshit. But I think overall, like there's something that everybody can enjoy about this record. Elements of R&B, elements of soul. There's some like metalcore sort of genty moments. There's some more rock-based moments. But I think overall, the thing that got me about this record is the vocalist. I think he does an interesting job of like being a different vocalist. He reminds me a lot of like the frontman for Don Broco in that sense. Like his vocal range isn't like super high. Like he can get some really great falsetto lines in there, much like what Don Broco does. They also have some really fantastic like falsetto-y sort of parts, but I think like his actual range, like his actual register, is more along the lines of that kind of like more like mid-range, kind of low range. And a lot of bands I feel like now, and like that post-hardcore like metal scene, like gen sort of scene, a lot of their vocalists have kind of like that more mid-range, more like higher vocals, like a little bit more nasally, which isn't a bad thing because I do enjoy a lot of those bands that sound like that. But this one just has a unique quality to them, and I think as a listener, they've really kind of brought a lot of different elements to the table. And I feel like for myself, if I didn't include this band or this album on the list, I would be very remiss to not like care or not give a crap about this record in its entirety. But go give all of these records a listen. I think they are really just super interesting records. Some of my favorites that unfortunately I missed out on reviewing, and I hope that these like larger synopsises give a bigger or broader approach to what's going on in kind of like what I do. I spend a lot of time on these, like basically like in their reviews and stuff that I do. I don't know if you can see it because my camera might white it out. Yeah, it does, but it's okay. So I write all this stuff out. It's all handwritten. So a lot of these reviews wind up taking some time because they are more personable to me. I love taking the time to listen to a record multiple times, and again, even if I don't particularly get it out in a good amount of time, I think that the record still holds true. I still want people to listen to it, and so I think this for me is a perfect middle ground because it allows me to talk with you guys and let you guys know what my thoughts are on like specific records that I feel like I didn't get around to doing, but I really either planned on doing, or it's new music or a band that I haven't checked out that has new music. So I'm excited for next Saturday. If you happen to miss out on this one, like I had mentioned, I'll be doing one on Saturday. It will be December 28th. It will be after Christmas. So guys, this will most likely be the last video you'll see me do before the year, before the holidays, at least Christmas. So if you do celebrate Christmas, or you don't, or you just are spending time with family, I hope you guys have a happy holidays. I just want to be completely honest. I want to thank you guys so much for just being so supportive over this year. It's been really awesome. I honestly, truly can't put into words how grateful and just humbled I am that people give a shit about what I do as a YouTube creator. I don't do this for a full-time living, and so for people to comment and for people to care as much as they do is very awesome. For me, I always wanted to try to create a space where people care about the music that they listen to, and whether or not they're a fan of it or not. I think that understanding and respecting somebody else's opinion is such a great and big thing, and I think that even if you may not like this record, the record that I just reviewed, or any of the records I've reviewed tonight, I think people have to go into an open mind and like listen to what other people think and how they feel about records and stuff like that. And there shouldn't be just kind of like a hindrance to just liking what you like you should. It's the same thing with like the clothes you wear, anything in relation to that. I think people really need to understand that it's music. Everybody has different opinions, everybody has different tastes, like everybody has different tastes in clothes, everybody has different tastes in food, all that sort of stuff. So if there's a record that I missed out on, let me know down below. Even if you're watching this after the fact, I will take a look at it because I'd love to get around to doing some that, again, I haven't had, unfortunately, the time to get around to. And just being that I want to really focus on the list that I'm going to be creating for this year, I wanted to make sure that some of the records that I will ultimately add to my albums of the year list to be reviewed, to have up here on the channel for you guys to watch. So again, if you like to see more content like this in the future in 2020, let me know, because I think it's very cool. I'd love to do it on like maybe like a Saturday at the end of the month or a Sunday at the end of the month. Whatever is most convenient, whatever works. I'd love to be able to kind of keep it more of a set schedule where something like this I can do more frequently because I think it's very fun, and also it doesn't give me the burden of having to go write it down and review it and edit it and post it and all that stuff. It just gives my gives my life a little bit of a break, which is great. I will actually be doing something very interesting as well to kind of close out this like smattering of album reviews, but I will be doing a thing for charity starting in January of 2020 after the holidays. Um, I will have a video up for that hopefully before the year is over with, and if not, it will hopefully be that same week. But I have a really interesting and cool charity in mind to do this for, and I will be running for the whole month, and it will be through Audio Addiction's merch store. So if you've ever considered or toyed with buying merch, and you guys know how little I plug it just because I feel like if you really want to support me, there's always a link to the merch in the bio. But I've really been thinking about doing this for a very long time, and I feel like with it being almost 4 years of doing Audio Addiction, I believe it is my time and kind of my duty as a artist to and YouTuber to kind of give back. And while it might only be like a small amount, I feel like for me it's something that I've always wanted to do, but unfortunately haven't really gotten around to it. So I will be doing a new design most likely. If not, it will still be the same designs that you see on the page. Anything that you purchase will go towards this charity, and I'll be donating half of what I make on it to charity. So if you're feeling in the giving mood, which most people are after the holidays, I feel like it is a great opportunity to not only help me out, which is not the focal point of it, but it is mainly to help out the people that I want to support, which is mental health awareness. I feel like I'm not particularly shy about how I feel in terms of like emotional stuff and like just how how I feel in general, but I don't care to delve into personal things as well, just because I feel like I don't want to bring the mood down for you guys as well. But for me, it's just been, a struggle to kind of like push to do stuff sometimes. And, you get in this depressive state on certain fronts, and you may not want to just do anything. You'll just like lay in bed for hours and not do anything. So I want to give my money to a mental health organization. So if you do have any of those, feel free to DM me. I'd love to be able to, if you are a part of a mental health organization and they do accept donations, feel free to email them to me. I'd love to be able to work with them in some capacity. Or if not, I think I'm going to be doing, I'm going to look it up real quick because I don't want to look like a big dummy, but I know I had looked it up earlier on my phone. Let me see, nonprofits. Yeah, so I was gonna do, I think it was NAMI, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm almost positive it was not. Yeah, it was NAMI. So if you are a part of NAMI, or if not, I will be, like I had mentioned, I will be donating half of what I make from the merch store to NAMI. I would love for people to really get into that. I will mention it in the second albums I missed for the year for next time, and I will, like I had mentioned, I'll be making a separate video on that entirely. So thank you guys again for the support. It's been really a fun 2019, but obviously we're winding down, and these albums of the year are just, each year it gets harder and harder for me. So I love doing these things. I think for next week I'm gonna be doing North Lane's newest record, Alien, and then a few others that again I missed out on that I'd love to do. Flight Club's newest record too, Ashland's newest record. I think those three plus some more will be there. So just let me know. DGD, absolutely. I think DGD is going to be putting out a really sick record. Thanks for joining, John. I'll be signing off very, very soon. Probably I'll do it for an hour. I got like 7 more minutes. We can chat it up. Yeah, DGD. It's crazy how many records they do a year. I think it is absolutely wild. they are a band that is just full of consistency, and it's awesome to see they're just still plugging away, still doing the thing. It was very cool to see My Chem just play. I saw some videos from the LA show, and that was awesome. So excited to see them do it. Yes, I have also been through it since Downtown Battle Mountain 1. Fantastic record. I'd say personally for me, Happiness is my favorite. I've always loved Kurt Travis, but that one to me is my personal favorite. I actually like a lot of the Tillian stuff too. I feel like Mothership is probably my next favorite DGD record. No, yeah, Mothership. Yeah, Mothership's definitely my second favorite DGD record. And then it's kind of hard to pick after that, but I would say those two are definitely my top two DGD records. If I had to round it out with a third, I'd probably put I'm really not sure. I'd probably put maybe the self-titled third. I feel like those I feel like that would be my top three. I feel like it's a little bit Kurt Travis handed, but nonetheless, I think is very solid. If you would like as well, I will be doing, I guess, bands that are releasing music in 2020. I will have to do my research and see which bands are coming out with new stuff. I know Movements was in the studio for a little bit, so I know that they have a new record coming out. Novelist from France, they're releasing a new record in 2020. That's already been confirmed, so I'm really excited about that. I think there's definitely a lot of other bands that I'm missing out on, but those are the ones that, to me, when I'm thinking about 2020 music, those are bands that I'm thinking of. I know 4 Years Strong is another one that I'm really stoked on, just because they're working with Will Putney this year, which is cool. Spirit Box, boy, I've already checked out Spirit Box. I love them. They're awesome. Shout outs to Spirit Box. Maybe we'll have something secretly in the works. I don't know. We'll find out in 2020, but I'd love to have them on for the channel, so we will see if things go that direction. But the Singles EP is awesome. Their newest single, Rule of Nines, I believe, super awesome track. I love it. I think all the things that they put out in general, like the Mara Effect, have been fantastic. They are a band that I feel like has been under the radar, and that will probably be on the next on part 2 of the albums that I forgot about this year. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I really missed out on that I'd really like to do reviews of, but I think, as I mentioned before, those are the ones that I'm really kind of interested in checking out and doing reviews on, that like I had mentioned before, unfortunately had no time to do reviews on. So if you have any other bands that you would like to suggest to me, feel free to leave them in the comments. I will be checking them this week, and I hope to get around to maybe listening to a few songs off their record or EP or something like that. But this year's been actually really good for music. I thought last year they had some really great records, but this year has been proving me wrong every single day. So I'm really excited for that. I'm really excited for 2020 as well. I think there's a lot of bands that are going to be putting out awesome records that I'm really stoked on. But this year they had some really, really great stuff. Yes, Lost in Separation was very good as well. I can't agree, Jonathan. But yeah, there's been some really some awesome bands with some awesome music this year. That it's just so much. It's so hard to get around to doing reviews of all of these records and stuff like that. So I feel like these little live videos give me more of an opportunity to be able to do these records that I don't get necessarily the time to do. But please check out all of these records. I will leave in the description where you can find out about all these bands, their social media links. Please go check them out. I think they have had some of the best records of this year. They're definitely in contention for albums of the year this year for sure. And they all have their own merits and rights, so go give them a listen. If you just want to keep up with what I'm doing, look above. There's links to go follow us on the social media. I know that's such a big thing, but If you would like to follow my daily whatever I do, check those out. Twitter, I feel like I should be more active on, but I'm not. So people will have to tweet at me to do stuff. But those are the ones that I have most often. But if not, clicking the subscribe on here, hitting that thumbs up, sharing the video, that goes probably the longest way. And again, guys, it's been an awesome 2019. Thank you guys for dealing with all the crap that I've had to go through this year. Just the ups and downs of just doing the job. So I greatly appreciate it. I hope you guys have a happy holidays. And we will be talking next Saturday on the albums part 2 that I missed out on in 2019. Thanks guys for watching, and hope to see you guys in the video on Saturday, which is the 28th. So come through on the 28th and let me know what you think about these videos. But I will be talking with you soon. Peace, guys.